Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Designs by Dana. Today I am going to do a double page layout, and as you can see here, I am doing pretty much a cardstock only layout. Now these are colors that I've picked from my Close to My Heart stash. The colors that I have here are Carolina, Bluebird, Paprika, pumpkin, and of course some white daisy. Got a little stumped there on my oranges, but I'm really excited about this layout because I have a really good vision of what I want to do with this. So I'm going to bring in my photos here and show you what I've got. I'm holding these up a little closer so you can get a good view here. These are some hearts that are decorated here in the Kansas City area. So this is the third year in a row Kansas City has done this, and they call it the Parade of Hearts. So I'm going to show you, this is the front, I'm going to put it this way, the front and the back of this particular heart. So Kansas City does this to promote the arts, and they take kind of auditions from local artists in the fall of the last 3 years. And they then select a certain number of artists to decorate these hearts. Specifically because Kansas City is known for being the heartland of the country. And then they decorate them. Then they place these hearts typically in the April timeframe all over the city. And they're out from April to August. There's an app that they put out, and then people can use the app and go what we call heart hunting. So there's a map and there's information on the app that tells you all about the artist, the story behind each heart, where they're located. And so I find it really fun to do with some of my friends, and we will pick a day and just go heart hunting and track all the hearts that we find, take selfies with them. It's just a really fun activity because you get to see different parts of the city that you may not be familiar with, and you get to see all this fun art and how it represents our town. So this heart in particular is a nod to all of the trade skills. So your plumbers, electricians, your pipe workers, and all of those types of trade type skills that build the city. So this one is called We Build Kansas City, and I love this overalls here on this side of the heart. And as soon as I saw this heart, I knew exactly how I could scrapbook this one because of all the little tools. And that really inspired, first of all, my paper choices. You can see the blues and the oranges. And I wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about that because the colors matched really well. And first of all, I'm trying to use up a lot of my old stash in the Close to My Heart papers. And when I looked at, my Stampin' Up! Colors, I found that these Close to My Heart colors really matched actually a little bit better than the Stampin' Up! Colors. And this gives me an opportunity to use up some of my stash and get rid of those cardstocks before, purchasing more in the Stampin' Up! Inventory. So I'm really happy about this match and how well it's going to work together. So let me just show you some of the other pictures. So I've done whole albums of these hearts for previous years, and this is the 2024 year. So I always do a front and a back of the heart, and then here's just a selfie of me with the heart. A picture of myself with the heart. This is my friend Laurel that went heart hunting with me on this particular day. And then I have another picture of the two of us, which is again another selfie. So I'm not really sure how I'm going to lay out my photos just yet, but I have a very clear vision of kind of what I want my layout to look like, and then I'll work on positioning the photos. So I may or may not use all of these photos. But I'm really inspired by two things. I'm inspired by these overalls. So I'm going to try to incorporate something with an overall look. And I'm inspired by the tools. So when I saw that, I instantly thought of this brand new stamp set. Well, to me, it's brand new. I don't know that it's brand new to Stampin' Up! The Trusty tools. And I thought this is going to work perfect. So I'm going to approach this layout a little bit differently than I do some of my other layouts, because normally I do the layout, I put all my papers down, dry fit, stick everything down, and then I work on my embellishments. But today I'm going to start by getting some of my embellishment pieces ready and then go and design the rest of the layout. So we're going to get some of this out of the way. And I'm actually going to start by bringing in my stamps. So I went through and you can see that I've pulled out several of the stamps that I think are going to work excellent with this layout. And because I know that I'm going to stamp several of them, instead of putting them on individual blocks and stamping them individually, this is going to be a more efficient way to stamp them all at once. And then I can use my dies to cut them out. And I'm probably going to do several sheets of these because I want several of these for the layout. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this up. I'm not going to do all of these on camera, but I want to at least show you my process for doing multiple stamps at one time as opposed to doing them on individual blocks. So I'm just going over this a couple times just to make sure I get ample ink coverage on each one of these stamps. So I think that's probably pretty good. And I will tell you that I am actually considering investing in a new Mitzi because I don't know if there's something wrong with mine or if it's me, but I do have trouble getting good coverage with my stamping. And I have inside here, I've got the cushion, and then I have it, of course, my little sticker piece, which is just a piece I cut down from an old Cricut mat. And then, of course, my paper. So sometimes I really have a hard time, and that actually looks like it did really well, but I'm going to give it another coat. But I have a hard time sometimes getting good coverage. So I'm debating on investing in a second one or maybe the smaller one. I haven't decided. If you have the small size, I would love to know your thoughts on that size because I'm really interested in getting the smaller one. I don't know that I would have a lot of use for the big 12 by 12 size, but I'm definitely considering the smaller one. So I like to use this, I don't even know what it's called, little tool to help me pressure that in and make sure I get good coverage. I know some people can just simply put their lid down and kind of press over that, and that seems to work for them, but not so much for me. So what I can do now is just pull this up, and we'll just go ahead and set this aside for the time being. Obviously, I'm going to do more of those. And now I can bring in my dies, and I'm sure you have seen how well these little pieces just line up perfectly. I love this little pencil. I've used it for lots of other things as well, besides just kind of a tool type of a theme. And, oh, here it is. And my little tape measure. So we're going to go get these cut out. And like I said, I'm probably going to stamp, oh, I guess I want my paintbrush too. We're going to stamp a couple of these sheets and get several pieces cut out for the layout. And then we'll start cutting and working on building up the layout. Okay, so I'm bringing in my 2 pieces of cardstock here, and this is the Carolina blue, and I'm going to use these as my base pages. And I'm not using my Versamats here because I want this layout to have a really nice continuous flow. So we're just going to leave it like this for now. And I'm thinking that since this is going to be an all cardstock layout, I'm going to want some visual texture on these base pages. So before I do anything else, I'm going to bring in just some scrap paper to protect my table here. And I'm gonna give it a little bit of texture with a shimmer brush. So I believe this is actually a sapphire shimmer brush, but it's going to be just enough contrast to put some texture around the base of this blue cardstock. And it doesn't need to be a lot. And I'm thinking this part is going to be covered, so I really just need it around the edges here. And you can see I'm using my bone folder just to kind of tap off some of that shimmer and ink off of this. So I'm going to set this one aside so that can kind of dry while we proceed with the rest of the process. And let's get some little design and texture on this piece. I'm going to turn that and splatter some on here. And I may also, as we develop this layout, decide to come in and do some random stamping, but we're going to see how this visual texture looks as we proceed. So let me get this out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and bring in this other piece, and it will need to dry just a little bit. But again, we can put these together and get a visual of what this is going to look like as we move forward. So I'm going to just put a little bit of tape down to hold these two pieces together, because like I said, this is going to be a continual flow. Let me try to get this nice and centered for you guys. And I'm just going to tack these together just to help me hold everything in place as we build the layout. And of course, we'll remove that later on. So I did a little bit of work on this off camera. I'm going to bring in this one photo here. This was really my main inspiration for this entire layout with this idea of the overalls. So let me just kind of set this over here. And so what I did is I got onto my Cricut design space and I kind of developed this concept of the overalls. So I cut this piece in the Bluebird cardstock, and I cut it down the middle because again I wanted that to flow over both pieces of paper. So I also inked the edges, so it's very subtle. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but I did kind of a tone on tone ink just to give it a little bit of distressing and kind of edging around there. So this is going to be kind of the build out of the entire layout. So everything is really kind of based on this concept of those overalls. Again, that was just really the inspiration. So I'm kind of building off of that, and it's not going to be exactly like those overalls, but again, I'm just inspired by that. So I cut this piece of white cardstock, and you can see because there's going to be a lot of layers here, I kind of gut out the middle of that because there's going to be a lot of paper behind all of these layers. So now I have a piece of the blue to just layer that up and give that a nice little border. And then we're going to keep building up on those layers. So now I have another piece to put on here, and this one's just going to go all the way across. So I was thinking about this, and I may be able to just cut this and make it just one border here, but this is going to be another pocket on these overalls. So I've got just kind of this white little border here for this pocket that will go across the overalls here. And then I've got my little guest that wants to come up and say hello to everyone. And then I've got another little pocket that will kind of go over here on this side. And again, I cut two pieces, and I may be able to just trim this down and put just a strip of that white to kind of peek through on this. Now I'm kind of sliding everything around here. But I think you guys will kind of get the idea as we go through this dry fit. So I'm going to put this little pocket over here. So as I do go back and glue these down. This piece will glue down completely. And then this piece and this piece, I'm only going to glue the sides and the bottom down, so they will be true pockets. Of course, I'm going to have to cut them right here because this will be the separator for the 2 pages. But then what I'm going to do is, let's see if I can find all my photos here. Here I have a photo that I think will fit right here on this pocket. So the reason that little kitty cat here is so intrigued is I've got these little strips of paper and I cut them at 1/8 inch. And I'm going to use those for some of these dividing pieces in the overalls. So I'm going to put them at about halfway across here. So this is 9 inches. So I know I'm going to want that at the 4.5 inch mark, but I'm just going to eyeball that for right now. So I'm going to want 2 of these pieces together here. And those will go like that. And then I've got some little pieces that I'm going to put down here. And these little pieces are going to represent kind of like a mini pocket. And what I'm going to put here in this little mini pocket, as I'm going to call it, are the pencils. So if you recall, in that Trusty tool set, we had a couple pencils that I stamped, and we're going to stick those down in that pocket. And I think this is just an extra piece, so I'm going to set it aside. I don't think I need it right now. Okay, so for the top of the overalls, I cut a couple little, I'm just going to call them tabs for now, for lack of a better word, to put here. And then these are just little 1-inch strips of paper, so I can trim those off as I finish off the layout. So this is just the same Bluebird cardstock, and I turned it over to the lighter side just to give it a little bit of contrast there. And I couldn't believe that I remembered I had these. So I bought these embellishments probably 5 to 10 years ago. And they've been sitting in my drawer, in my stash. And these are actually little overall hooks. I don't know why I had them and how I remembered that I had them. So I'm not sure how I'm going to adhere them just yet, but I'm going to place them up here for now. And they've got little buttons that go with them. So I'm just going to put them there as placeholders. So I don't know if I'm just going to let them sit there like that, or if I want to trim this down, or even kind of tag it out so it can actually fold through the loop there. So I'm going to think about that, but for now I'm just going to lay that there so we can get the visual of how this is all going to come together. So as far as my photo placement, I think I mentioned earlier that I always like to have the front of the heart and the back of the heart. So I want to put those 2 over here. And then for my landscape photos here, I have these that I can put on this side. So I've got one of me, one of both of us, and then one of my friend Laurel here. So that's kind of how I envision this kind of coming together. Now, all of those pieces of the tools I cut out and I colored them all in with the markers. So what I'm thinking is, since I'm going to make these little pockets, I can stick these into the pockets like that. So this one, I'm thinking I might kind of make it like it's hooked onto the pocket. So I might stick it like that. And then we'll kind of stick a wrench down in this one. Gotta have our hammer and maybe a paintbrush and the hammer sticking out of there. This one, remember, isn't really a pocket, so I'm not gonna stick anything out of that one. But I think that's what I want as far as what would be in the overalls. And then I've got all of these other pieces that I can use for embellishment clusters around my photos. So I'm going to think about how I want to position those. I can just kind of play around with them as I go along. And you know, I typically like to do things in groups of 3, so I'm going to play around with these and see what is going to work. I had a really fun time playing around and coloring these in, and I tried to keep mostly with my color scheme, but you can see I added some yellow, obviously, with the pencil and everything, but I think that it worked quite well. And this is just a little audition. I'm not really married to it staying this way, but yeah, I'm just going to kind of play around with that. So that kind of gives me a placeholder. So what I need to do is add some stitching to my overalls. So I brought in 2 different options. I have my Jelly Roll pen, which is basically a gel marker, but I was afraid I wanted something a little bit thicker and bolder. So I brought in also a Posca paint pen. And if you've ever used these are basically like acrylic marker pens. And I did some practice on a piece of scrap paper. So these 2 lines here are the Posca pen, which I really thought that was the route I was going to go. And then I practiced with the gel pen. And after taking a second look at that, I really think that the gel pen is probably going to be the better way to go with that. So I'm glad that I tried that out and did a little practice. So we're going to move a lot of this out of the way. And I'm just going to pull out some of these pieces. And I'm not going to do all of this on camera, but I want you to just kind of see how I'm going to do it. So I'm just going to untack this and slide it over out of the way. And I'm bringing in just a scrap piece of paper for this. So what I'm going to do is line my paper up. And if you need to bring in your Versamat or something with a grid, you could certainly do that, but I'm just going to line up my paper where I've got a straight line kind of on the edge of the paper here. And I typically will start my gel pen on some scrap paper just to make sure I've got some good flow with that. And then I can use my paper as my guide. You could do this with a ruler, certainly. I like to use paper because it's more flush with the paper that I'm stitching or writing on. And also because that way I don't get any ink or anything on my ruler. So this way I'm just going to come in and add my little faux stitch lines. And you can see I'm kind of giving it a second draw line, so I'm not just doing one, I'm kind of going back over it a second time. That's going to give it a little bit extra thickness and dimension, so it's going to make it a little bit brighter, show up a little bit better. So that's really all it is, but I'm going to do that all the way around the overalls, both pieces, and throughout the pieces here. And then I'm going to get that cut in half. So let me get that done and glued down, and we'll come back and make sure that we're happy with the embellishment pieces, and we'll figure out how we want to get these glued down, and then what kind of title we want to put on here as well. Okay, so I have all of my stitching done. I've glued down all of these pieces. I've glued down my white strips. This photo is glued down, and I've tucked in some of these pieces here. These aren't actually glued down, but they're tucked in. And I've got my photos just laid down. They're not glued yet. I figured out how I wanted to adhere my straps on the overalls, and this one is down, so I wanted to show you what I did. I took this piece and I kind of did like a tag. I had to make it pretty narrow here so that it would go through the end of the overalls. And for this, I'm going to need to pull in some glue dots and to make this work. And I have to keep them locked up because my kitty cat will run away with them. So I got this nice and narrow so you can see it is thin enough to go through that loop for the buckle. And it doesn't go through very far, but just far enough to wrap around so it has that natural looped look as if it were a piece of cloth. So it will loop through like that, and then I'm going to use the glue dots to secure that on the back side. So I'm going to bring in the glue dots, and I don't like to touch the glue dots with my skin or my fingers just because of the acid, you know, that your skin holds. So I just put that on the back side, and then again I'm going to secure that down with the glue dot. I'll try to straighten that up a little bit, and it's really that easy. So as I lay that down on the layout, I want it to be a little angled because you see the straps are kind of going outward. And what I did here with the button is I put just a tiny piece of foam tape because having the button flush wouldn't allow it to hold in place there. So with the foam tape, if I wanted this to be more interactive, it will actually slide up and down. Although once it's in position, there will be no need for it to move. But that's how I secured that. And then I'll just glue this down, cut it, and fold it back around the back side of the layout. So we'll glue that down and that will be secured. And there's my overalls. So really cute how that turned out. I was happy with getting all that put together. Now, if you recall, I kind of played around with how I wanted my little extra pieces of all these little tools around the photos and little clusters. And so I'm going to kind of put those back in a spot where I kind of not necessarily had them before, but I think I want them to be now. And as I'm kind of doing that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the color choices in the heart. So I want to give some credit to the artist of the heart in the color choices. So the blue and the orange, because those are complementary colors. And I think the artist did a really good job in picking those colors and the color choice and the complementary colors. And you can see with the layout how well the colors are kind of coming together with those colors. So another little fun story for you is that I mentioned in my intro about how the city takes auditions for the hearts every year, and then they pick a certain amount of artists. Well, I auditioned this year to be an artist for the hearts, and unfortunately I didn't get picked, but maybe someday I will share my art that I auditioned. So this past couple years I kind of have dug into my inner artist and thought I'd give it a try, but unfortunately I didn't get picked, but we'll maybe try again. So you see here I'm pulling out some of my thin cuts. This is my new favorite die from Stampin' Up. It's called Spotlight on Nature. And here I have an old standby with Close to My Heart. This is the stitched hearts. So I put one here, kind of again mimicking the heart in the photo. So I think I'll put that one there. And then with the Spotlight on Nature, I cut some from both the hearts and the Spotlight on Nature because you can see these placed here. They just really seem out of place, and I thought they needed some grounding. So I inked these, and I cut an extra, I have an extra, and I just want you to see the difference and what a difference this makes by inking the edges. And when you lay that down on the paper, it just makes such a dramatic difference. Inking does take a little extra time, but I think it really pays off in the end. So I'm going to use these hearts and circles to tuck under here and use them as a way to ground these embellishments. And I think what I can do is actually pull these photos in a little more just to tie everything together. And then as I tuck these in, I've got a better spot to ground these pieces. And I think that's going to make these look a lot better. So here you can see, I'll play around with this arrangement a little bit more, but I think that I'm going to struggle with it, but I think this is going to look a lot better. So we've got something to ground those. So let's slide these in a little more. And I think I'll do another circle up here. And again, we can play around with the positioning maybe a little bit more as we put them down. And then maybe we'll put a heart over here just by itself and fiddle around with these guys over here. So I think that gives them a little bit better backing than just have it look like they were just kind of thrown together on there. So I like that a lot better with those little pieces added to the layout. So what I have left at this point is to really think about my title. Of course, everything is inspired by this heart, so I really want to try to pull this We Build Kansas City in. So I'm thinking, and I'm going to hold this one up a little closer. It looks like this is kind of a banner, and I want to try to emulate that, and then of course the Kansas City font. So I'm going to go back to my Cricut design space and see if I can come up with something in something similar to that I can cut on the Cricut. And for this banner, I'm thinking I could put something right here and perhaps the Kansas City here. So I have an idea for the banner, and I'm going to again bring in my orange cardstock here, and I may have to cut this down. And I found in my stash some old sticker pieces, and what I'm thinking I can do is use these white stickers to put in the We Build, and just use markers and color them in with the blue marker. So I'm going to play around with the sizing and everything and get on Cricut and see if I can find a font that will look something like that to cut out the Kansas City, and see if we can make that work. So let me see what I can find, and then we'll come back and see if we can put that together. So I found a font on Cricut that I was very happy with, and I used the offset feature to cut a background and of course the foreground title. And I was smart enough to remember to use the adhesive sheets to cut that, and then I could just pull that backing off and put those down. It was very delicate, so it took me a while to fiddle around with that, but it worked out quite well in the end. I did lose the eye from the Kansas City, and I did bring in some blue dots to fill in that, and it worked out really well. Now, I also wanted to bring in my stickers and show how just coloring them in while they're on the carrier sheet is a lot easier than not doing it that way. And then I was really inspired, again, by the photo to create this little banner piece. And it kind of reminded me of a banner that you would fly in the air, or even a piece of carpet that might have been rolled up. So I'm going to ink that up and then tear off one edge, and then from the other edge, I'm going to roll that and bring in some white string and just kind of weave that through the rolled end. And I struggled a little bit with getting that glue to hold down, so I'm going to put a block over that and let it kind of sit and dry, and then I'll glue down the rest of my title. And then I have some of my stash, some durable artesian studs that I'm going to bring in and put those on the overalls, and then add those to my clusters. And as I add those to the clusters, that's going to wrap up the rest of the layout and complete it through. Okay, you guys, here's the final layout. I'm really excited to know what you guys think of this, and you can let me know by hitting that like button and throwing some comments down below and let me know what you think. Now, I'm going to hold this up a little closer, and as we kind of walk through the final view of this, let me also share with you that during the month of July, if you place an order on my website, for every $50 that you spend, you will also earn a coupon for $5 to spend next month in August. So let's take a look here at the tools. I don't think I mentioned previously that as I colored these in, you can see on the paintbrushes here, I used the markers and I colored the little tips of the brushes to show that there's some paint on the brush. And then I did normal blending with the markers to color those in. And if you've been around here with me for a while, you know that I do love to color. So cutting all those out and coloring those in was not an issue for me because I like to do that. So I've got all my little clusters here, and I tucked these into the pockets of the overalls. Really happy with how my hooks turned out on the overalls. There's our title. And let's go over to this side here. We've got our pencils tucked into the pocket. And I think that grounding all of these little clusters with the circles and the hearts really made a big difference, as opposed to just kind of laying those down kind of randomly. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. It really goes to show how you can do a lot with just cardstock. You don't have to have a lot of pattern paper in your stash, and it can go a long ways. So again, let me know if you have any questions. Please throw some comments down and let me know what you think of this. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, walking through the video, and I will definitely be back next week with another fun layout to share with you. So have a great day, and we will see you soon. Bye, everyone.